Hello, welcome to Making Stuff Up with Wendy Watkins. I'm Wendy Watkins and I'm your host. A host that believes that just because you do not have a diagnosis of mental illness doesn't mean you're enjoying good mental health. And if you do have a mental health diagnosis of mental illness, then you can have good mental health. I know that because I'm Wendy, as you know, and I live with both mental illness and good mental health. And if you're looking to improve your mental health, this is the place where you'll learn how to use your MSU so you could live a delicious life. Look, we all make stuff up, right? So why not make up the good stuff? My guest today is Erin Newman. She is a speaker and an author, a money mindset mentor, and a Soul Fire Ignitrix for women entrepreneurs. She helps them overcome mindset blocks to money and income so that they can truly do what lights them up in their business and make the income they desire. Sounds familiar? Erin loves to make stuff up. So let's welcome Erin.
Hi, Wendy. I'm so excited to be here with you guys.
Yay, welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad that you are here as well, my dear. Well, I do not want to break tradition. The first thing we do here at Making Stuff Up with Wendy is to give our guests their MSU, right? Because I know, Erin, that you already make stuff up and you make the good stuff. So here is your certificate. And now you could put, now you could put that MSU behind your name. And people could ask you what that is, and you could tell them that you make stuff up. All right, here you go. Dun, dun, here's your diploma. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks, Wendy.
You're so welcome. Ah, perfect. So the second thing we do here is just remind our listeners, well, not only just remind, but thank you all for taking the time to listen and show up. We know your time is valuable and just want to remind you that this is not a replacement for any type of mental health treatment. It's an edutainment about ways to increase your mental health through real conversation with real people that make stuff up. And so if you are having a mental health crisis or challenge, please call your local mental health provider, and there is numbers in the comments that you can call. All right, so Erin, let's talk a little bit about my favorite topic of making stuff up. So I'm curious, in your life, how do you define the concept of making stuff up?
Well, I think we're going to talk about this a little bit more too, but I mean, I think it's both the positive making stuff up and the negative making stuff up, right? I always love to really deepen into the practices of manifesting, of creating my reality through my thoughts. And so that is definitely a place where we all make things up that then come true, right? And those can be as simple as you, Wendy, moving out, to a whole new part of the country, right? At some point, that was just an idea in your head, and you had to say to yourself, I'm going to go live in Seattle for a little while, Portland, sorry. I'm going to go
live in about Portland. Seattle, but Portland was
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to go live in this place. I can do that. I'm a person who can do that. I'm a person who can move across the country, and at some point, in order for anything in your life to happen, you have to have that idea that you can be that person, that you could be that person who could go to college or to get that kind of job, or even, for us as entrepreneurs, it's yeah, I could be the person who is an entrepreneur, right? And that entails some making things up in your own head. If you're not already doing the thing, you have to say to yourself at some point in that sequence, oh, okay, that could be me. I can make that life up for myself too. But then of course, on the flip side of that, there's all those things that we make up in our heads about who we are and the old patterns that we have to follow and belong to, and the ways we were raised, and this is who I am, and I can't break out of that pattern,
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely both sides of that in everyone's mind, in terms of here's the things I can make up that are going to put me along the path that I really choose. And then here's all that old programming. Here's all those things that, I created for myself at a really young age, but now for me at 43, they're still present, right? They're still part of the story I tell myself and the things that I make up in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is just how you say it really is just made up in your head, right? It's not like anybody comes and deposits thoughts. Now, there are, like you said, our parents have wishes, our partners have wishes, family have wishes, intentions for us, but we really get to choose about what we're going to think. At least we don't get to choose maybe what's going to happen in our world. Our
Right.
thoughts do contribute to our reality, but we can choose how we respond to
Always.
life
Always.
and the curveballs that it will throw us, right? So it's that conscious choice piece of using your MSU that I'm hearing is powerful one way or the other. Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, right? Wasn't it Henry Ford that said that? Whether you think you
Right.
can or think you
Yep.
can't, you are right.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, something you just named, like, I think that anybody who's trying to walk a spiritual path or trying to walk any kind of new path, what they first have to come to is that responsibility for the choice, that responsibility for the conscious action, that responsibility for, their own life. And that, okay, now I get to choose something different. That might have been true about any aspect of your life. That might have been true about my health. That might have been true about my relationships. That might have been true about my relationship with my parents or my kids up until this point. But if I want that to change, I now have to make something else up, right? I have to create something new from this and really, like you said, use that conscious choice that we all have available to us, that we sometimes don't see it that way, right? We feel like, oh, things are happening to me. COVID is happening to me. All these things are happening to me. Instead of saying, how do I want to react? How do I want to show up in this?
Yeah, it is a choice. And look, it's not like you have to monitor every thought you're thinking, right? It's
Right.
not what we're saying. It usually shows up from how you're feeling, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's where this conversation coincides with mental health, right? Because when your physical health, you're feeling good, you're feeling good, right? You don't have a stomach ache, you don't have a headache, you don't have a backache, you feel good. And mental health is the same way. You want to feel good. That is the barometer of the thoughts you're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because the thought always precedes that feeling, right? And so if you're having this, I think, for me, what it always shows up like is this, what I call sort of like that little whine in your ear, that little like, "Wee, something's wrong, and you don't even know what it is. It's just this little um, like a bee buzzing in your ear kind of, and this like kind of low level anxiety that just starts kind of churning in your stomach. But there's always a thought that is causing that feeling. There's always a thought that's causing the little bee to buzz. And it's usually something like, well, you're not enough and you'll never make it and you'll never be as da 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 da, that's what the little bee is saying. And she's pretty loud, and so it's really tuning into what she's saying that will allow me to let go of that feeling,
Mm.
whatever that anxious, sad, angry, even feeling that's coming up. There's a thought there, and when I can listen to her and hear what she's saying, I'm not saying it always goes away, but a lot of times it goes away.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a practice, right? The more you notice and the more you can, lower the volume on the wine, so to say, then it's easier to move forward. Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I find it fascinating for myself and this concept of making stuff up, of how we could use it to benefit or detract from our life, right? And I know that there are times that I have used it to detract from my life, even simple little things, like when I would knock over a glass of water and say to myself, I knew I was going to do that, right? There was a little bit of something like I had a feeling I was going to do it, and you know what? I did it. So, and then
Mm,
there's the opposite ways of the ways that I can set myself up to listen to, I call it the whispers, right? That intuition in that way, not so much the negative chitter chatter, but that intuition that comes in that tells us the way to go, right? The positive thing to do. And it's learning to listen to that. How do you use your MSU or maybe your intuition to benefit or detract from your best life? Like, is there a specific way you use it, Erin?
Well, I would say I'm a PhD in the detracting of my life for sure. PhD plus plus in, all the things I have always told myself. But I think through that process, and I'm sure you feel this way too, Wendy, it's like through that process, I also then had to gain a bunch of tools just so that I could get out of bed in the morning, really. I mean, all the tools I teach my clients, all the work that I do, it's so I could be a functioning human, just a barely functioning human, right? And so those tools, of course, then also help you to be an entrepreneur, to grow your business, to do all the fun things too, to do all the cool stuff that we love to do, right? And yeah, I mean, I think for me, the biggest thing that has shifted for me over the last few years really is really allowing myself to listen to, you call them the whispers, the intuition, the guidance from source, that information that's saying, hey, go down this path, even though you don't know what it's going to look like. And just keep trusting this path, even though you have no idea what the other end is going to look like. And just continuing to listen to what that says, even despite all the things that I'm telling myself, all the what people would call normal, rational, logical things, and I have a husband who's very normal, rational, logical, he's always the one who, I always tell this story about, I decided I was going to go to this 3-year shamanic practitioner training and had told him this is something I wanted to do. And of course, he came back with this whole list of reasons why I shouldn't do it. And mostly money being the main one. And you just finished this life coaching training, and you want to go spend thousands of dollars and go all across the country. But those were his reasons. And one of them was, what's the ROI on this whole shaman thing? So I have him mirroring back all these things to me all the time. And, just really listening to that intuition. And I woke up the next morning after that conversation and I said to him, babe, I don't know how I'm going to find the money. My business wasn't making any money at that time. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to find this money. It was thousands of dollars. But I'm doing this, and just really, it was so clear to me. It was so clear that this was just a message from source. Like I could just tell you all these stories of how it all just lined up and happened in this really, really magical way. And I did find the money. My business magically created the money that I needed for that. But it was from continuing to drop in and continuing to listen to those whispers and where I'm being guided, and honestly still never knowing, like, oh, how's the money going to show up for this, or how is the time going to show up for this, or how is the person or the opportunity, how is that going to actually play out, and frankly not really knowing how a lot of times, and just continuing to drop into that anyway. And I think that's when we're talking about making stuff up, if you can make stuff up in step with that guidance, with that intuition, with what you're being shown, then it just gets to be a lot easier.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. And whether the intuition shows up first and then you make something up, or you feel the urge to make something up and your intuition then guides you on the path. Because the one thing about making stuff up is that you can't get it wrong because it's not made up.
Oh, yes.
Right? And that for people is like, it gets to be your thought. And I mean, well, actually, I may take that back a little bit, because there could be some thoughts that people think that are wrong, right? That are don't represent their best self, that come from a place of ego or fear or past experience, right? So there could be things like that. But the beautiful thing, when you're aware and can use your MSU, that's when you could shift the thoughts. right? 'Cause
Mm-hmm.
that's when you would use the MSU, right? You're going down, you're thinking thoughts that aren't beneficial to your wellness. You know
Yes.
that by the way you feel, and then you could turn around and make something else up that can shift those feelings that allow you to be able to feel good and do good. And look, I'm not saying, and you've heard me say this every show, is that I'm not saying that thoughts are going to help you move from depression to joy. Like, you can't make that up, but you can make up feeling better than where
Right.
you are now, and
Right.
moving up that, I'll call it an emotional guidance system, like Abraham speaks of it.
Yes.
There's many ways to look at it, but it's just all about using your MSU to feel better
Yes.
and
Yes.
practicing that.
It's so funny you just mentioned Abraham, because I was just thinking about how she says, just choose a next better thought, right?
Yes,
Like, you're not going to be able to do this or this, a full 360 or whatever, or 180, whatever it is. But you're not going to be able to do that instantaneously. And I think that's part of, unfortunately, like, the detrimental side of the positive psychology movement is this, like, well, everything is your thoughts and you should just be able to snap out of it and change instantly. And that puts so much pressure on us, and doesn't leave a lot of room for grace and healing and, um, yeah, just way too much pressure. But if you can just choose that, like, okay, what's a slightly next better thought, or even, I can sometimes really laugh at myself in terms of, like, if I can hear those thoughts and really hear what they are. And like this morning, I was having this little, like, anger loop, and it was like everything was making me angry. And I'm driving down the street, and, like, somebody was going too slow in front of me, and I was literally like, oh, I'm literally angry that this person is going too slow. Like, this is crazy. And I was able to, like, laugh at myself a little bit, like, see the thought and be like, okay, if this is the worst thing that's happening to you today, Erin, like, I think we're okay. Like, I think we're
absolutely.
okay.
Yes, yes.
Like,
Well, the car is the perfect trigger to make stuff up. I'll
yes,
tell you that. We
right?
all know that, right? For all of you listening, once again, thank you for listening to Making Stuff Up with Wendy and joining us. But we all know in the car is that place to make up the bad stuff. That is
Oh,
my trigger. And it was actually part of my catalyst to do what I do, to do
hmm.
professional coaching and to bring the joy factor into people's awareness. Because what I know is that when people feel good, they'll let you merge into traffic. When people don't
Mm,
feel good, no one's getting in. Like, I know that's a fact.
right.
So my big why is to have more people let others merge in traffic, and imagine a world that,
That is awesome. That's such an awesome thought, Wendy. That's so awesome.
well, and that's what you bring, because because the impact that makes, right? I mean, you get mad in the car, and then maybe not you, but people get mad in the car, road rage, and they go into work and they're mean, or they go home to their wife, their children, they're mad, they're mean, and they're mad at the world when someone just went a little slow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. How
Yeah.
dare they?
Yeah, so many opportunities to make stuff up, but that's the best place to practice. The best
Yes.
place is in the car, because
Or home with your family.
yes, yes,
So, as we record this over the holidays, like, what's that quote? I think it's Ram Dass, like, you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family or something like that.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's so true. It's
Mhm.
so true. So yeah, yeah, so many opportunities for us to all look at what we're making up
Mhm.
and how to make stuff up to feel better, right? And that's where the act, and I have a feeling this is something that you use with your clients, Erin, is using the act of reframing,
Mhm.
of being able to, it's okay if you think a negative thought, you could change it in that moment, to something a
Absolutely.
little less negative. And it doesn't have to be
Absolutely.
positive. It can even just be a little less negative. And,
Yep.
and I think, because a lot of people will use affirmations and reframing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love, so I do, and I'm sure you know this work, Wendy, I do EFT tapping with my clients.
Mhm.
And so part of that work to me is, and why it works so well, is you're really starting with acknowledging the really bad thought, right? Like that most of us don't even want to see, you know. So I was working with a client this morning, and she was talking about, you know, moving locations for her photography school, and being kind of nervous about that. You know, it would be a bigger space and more debt, that kind of thing, or at least a bigger payment. And when we worked on that and really got into what it was all of those old fears of like not disappointing people. You know, if she goes into this new space and it fails, and then she disappoints everyone, right? And so starting with like what's the really scary thing that you're really afraid of here, you know? Yes, maybe ostensibly it's like, okay, I might miss a payment or something, right? But what's beneath even that? And if we can start there and really acknowledge what we're making up, you know, that like deeper truth, that old one, um, that's where I think we can get a lot of juiciness. And then we can start the reframe, you know, then we can start to look at like, does this have to be true anymore? You know, this is something I created when I was probably 6 years old. You know, I don't have to be that girl, little girl anymore. You know, I'm safe now. And so reframing from that,
Yes.
the crappiest thought, like the
Yes.
yuckiest thought, is really helpful.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Thank you for putting it that way. It's definitely uncovering, shining the light in those dark areas that we don't want to look. And because that is a filter we use of making stuff up, whether we're conscious of it or not.
Yes.
Right. And a lot of times we're
Yes.
not even conscious of it. So it's just old things that can be weighing us down, that it's always good to shift first before the reframe. Excellent. Excellent. So I would like to step into doing an MSU challenge with you right now. Are you up for it?
I'm always up for it.
All right. So this has been this season's question du jour,
Okay.
and what we'd like to know, and all the listeners would like to know, is if you, and maybe you already knew this, but if you had the concept of MSU when you were 18 years old, how would you have used your MSU
Oh,
to support you in living your best life?
oh my God. 18. Wow. Well, I had already messed up a bunch of things by 18, so
Join the
but
club.
the Erin of today is not the Erin of 18. Yeah, though, you know, on paper I probably looked pretty good, but I was a hot mess for a long time, Wendy. Yeah, gosh. Oh boy. Well, there'd definitely be a lot of boyfriends that I didn't date, right? Like could have
So what
skipped
would be
over.
the MSU? What would be something that you would tell her how to use an MSU
Mm,
to make different choices, maybe?
yeah. You know, I think I would have really worked with her around the shame piece. You know, at that age, I was already carrying a lot of shame from decisions I'd made and things I'd done, and to really start reframing that all those things you think are true, you have just made them up. Like those don't have to be true anymore. And they probably never even were, you know, all these things that you think other people are thinking about you when frankly they're only thinking about themselves, right? Like they're not actually spending any time thinking about you. You know, definitely not after you've all graduated high school, you know. So yeah, just to really, you
That's
don't
a
have to.
golden nugget right there, is that we spend so much time worrying about what other people think, especially at 18, right? As we're forming ourselves, and that people aren't even thinking about
They're
us.
not even thinking about us. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just to let go of, yeah, like I said, all those things you think were true, that people were thinking about you. And even, you know, what my parents might have been thinking about me or planning for me, right? I had all these ideas about the person I had to be and what I had to do. And again, those definitely were not conscious at that time. You know, I was definitely just following this path that I thought was set in stone and I thought was laid out, and this is what everyone does. And you know, I even went to my dad's alma mater, right? Which I loved and it was my path. But like looking back on that, like that's some serious shit there, right? Like, why did you think you had to go do that when I probably would have been better at like some very super liberal arts women's college somewhere, like where we're all sitting around singing Kumbaya. But I didn't even know that was a possibility, at the time. And so just being able to say, listen, dear Erin, none of that stuff has to be true. And you get to now make something else up. You get to claim something else. And you get to decide your own identity too. Like it doesn't have to look like all the people that came before you and their pathways, which frankly, like, did that make them happy? Like, like, are you even looking at the right pathway anyway? So, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I would tell her.
That's a nice little nugget, right? That's a nice little nugget. Just pay attention to what you're making stuff up, people. That's all we're saying here. Just notice how you feel and know that you could make up something different.
Mm.
Yeah. So, Erin, we're going to get ready to wrap up here. Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, just that each moment is a continual opportunity to make up something new. That no matter what has come before in your life, this is your new opportunity to choose something different. And, the people around you might not understand, they might not even like it, but you always get to choose something new.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that becomes part of your process, right? The new choice, that's what you start making up and it moves you towards that. Thank you so much, Erin Newman, for being a guest on Making Stuff Up with Wendy. Really appreciate your time and your wisdom. Thank you to all of you viewers that have taken the time to watch. Remember to subscribe below and look for new episodes coming out each week. And remember, we all make stuff up, so why not make up the good stuff? Create a great day. Thank you.